Ciao a tutti, it's Laura in Italiano, and today we're taking a virtual tour of Bellagio on Lake Como in northern Italy in the region of Lombardia. This is Lake Como, and this is got an interesting shape. It's kind of like a man running. You have the two legs on the left, you have the Lake Como leg, and on the right, the Lecco leg. This is, again, Lake Como, over 1,000 feet deep. It is one of the deepest lakes in all of Italy. It is a glacial lake, and this is Bellagio, seen from the water as you approach from the water, and you've got the Swiss Alps in the background. You're at this point only about 45 minutes away from the Swiss border. And this is one of my favorite views of Bellagio as you come in from the Lungo Lago, or the promenade. You see the bell tower in the far distance, and then up on the right, as you zoom out, you can see up on the right on the hill the Rockefeller Foundation, which you can actually tour, and the lovely promenade with the lake on the left. Now, looking at Bellagio, if you look at Lake Como, right there where the two legs of the lake meet, right in the center, dividing them is Bellagio. In fact, the original Latin name is Bailacos, which means dividing the lake. And here is the beautiful Via Garibaldi in Bellagio, but you can see it's pretty narrow for cars to pass through, and there's not much parking. Now, in the old days, you used to be able to park in many places in Bellagio, including in this piazza that faces the church and upper part of Bellagio, but those days are gone, and pretty much everywhere they have restricted parking to there's almost no parking. Now, to the right of these buildings, there is a small parking lot, but it's very tight spaces, and it's very hard to come by a space. So I highly recommend you don't drive in Bellagio. But if you absolutely must drive in Bellagio, then I recommend that one of the only places you're going to possibly find a spot would be in Pescallo, which is a suburb. This is facing Pescallo, going down to the water, and on the right you can see the parked cars. You pay, you go to the machine, you pay, you put in your driver's plate, your license plate number, and then you can hopefully get parking. But again, Pescallo, absolutely beautiful. That's one of the only places you can maybe find parking. A lot of tree-lined streets, a lot of beautiful homes, small homes, gravel road, not many shops and restaurants, public restrooms in Pescallo, but a beautiful spot. A lot of these salitas, which are these steps that go on forever, pretty steep. You can't actually get to Bellagio that way with one of these salitas. But again, beautiful little town. This is another one of those going up the old stony road going that takes you eventually to Bellagio, and then this is on the lake with all the sailboats here in Pescallo. So Pescallo, an old fishing village, Pescallo, with beautiful higher end homes, and this is one of the doorways there in Pescallo. One of my favorite spots, and it's very quiet when a lot of Bellagio in the high season can get very crowded, very hard to get around. So these are the beautiful painted homes in Pescallo. You have swans, you have geese, you have ducks, you have the sailing boats, and looking across to the Como side, across Lake Como. Now, speaking of Como, one thing I'd recommend, and I will do, my next video will be dedicated to the actual city of Como, because it's beautiful in its own right, and it's also another possibility to not have to get around with a car, is to come over by ferry from Como and then either stay in Bellagio or just do Bellagio as a day trip, and then use the ferry and not have to rely on a car. I think is a really, really good way to go. Now, if you want to stay in Bellagio, especially in the lakefront area, there's no way you're going to be able to park your car. You're going to have to go back and forth between Pescallo, which is about a half an hour walk. So I don't recommend you do that. So again, if you're going to stay on the lakefront in Bellagio, then please find a way to do that without a car. Again, rely on the ferry. So speaking of Bellagio, this is coming into Bellagio from the water. This is the view coming from the water. The nicest hotel is the 5-star Grand Hotel Serbelloni along the lakefront. Now, some reviews say it's gone down a little downhill, but it's still stunning. It's one of the only places that also has a pool. Now, I believe you can still use the pool even if you're not staying at the Grand Hotel Serbelloni by paying a day use fee. But whether you use the pool at the Serbelloni, or also there's the Lido, which is down towards Villa Melzi, which you can, they have a pool, and also there's a pool at the Sporting Club above Bellagio. I recommend you do that over swimming in Lake Como because, as I said before, one of the deepest lakes in Italy, but also one of the most polluted, unfortunately. So here you have the Suisse, which is a wonderful, it's I think a 1-star hotel. It's on the lakefront down from the Villa Serbelloni, the Grand Hotel Villa Serbelloni. But what I really love about the Suisse is the food. It is a little more high-end, and it's a little French influenced. You can have lunch there, you can have dinner, and it's really nice. Sometimes they have music at night. Now, the service is very good. You have to know that here in this part of Italy, Being this close to Switzerland, the character is a little bit different. It's more northern Italian character, almost a Swiss character to the people in Bellagio. But this is the Swiss again at night. And then they also have a terrace upstairs, which a lot of times is reserved for groups, banquets, special events, receptions, that kind of thing. But if you're staying at the Swiss, or even if you're just going up there, you can just go check it out because it's a great view looking at Lake Como with Isola Comacina in the background. And it's also just across from the Swiss is a really nice place to take the ferry. Also, there's a little tourist choo-choo train in Bellagio that goes during the high season, especially in the summer months. And it's also just across from one of the places where you can get the smaller ferries or private boats. And also, if you go down further along the lake, you can also find a place where you can rent paddle boats and that kind of thing, which is also a really nice thing to do if you're staying there at the Swiss or along the lake. Restaurant-wise, aside from recommending the Swiss, there's a few places. I like La Lanterna, which is also a pizzeria on one of the salitas. Also, just down from the main square in Upper Bellagio, across from the church, is a wonderful pizzeria and restaurant. Always really good fresh food. Always gets really crowded, also with locals, and that is called Babayaga. That's one of my favorites. Also, on one of the salitas called Salita Serbelloni, you'll find the Trattoria San Giacomo. That's one of my favorites as well. A little bit small on the inside, but they also usually do outside seating up on the steps, so it's really nice. Also, just down from the Villa Melzi in the little town of Loppia is a place called Alle d'Arsine, which means at the docks, and people really, really love that restaurant. Speaking of the Villa Melzi, these next few shots were taken at the Villa Melzi, which is just coming on, it's along the lake, absolutely beautiful gardens. That's looking across to the Villa Carlotta, that white building on the right, which is, you can also tour it, a beautiful villa. The Villa Melzi is more for outdoors, flora and fauna. They have a koi pond and a Japanese tea garden and the amazing kinds of trees and plants there. Make it a perennial favorite for me to go back time and time again just to walk there and take pictures, relax, and soak in the wonderful, amazing magic of Lake Como that you have spread out in front of you and looking across to some of those dramatic granite mountains that are the forebears or the ones in the foreground before the Swiss Alps that are just across. And then you have towns like Menaggio, Tremezzo, Cadenabbia, all kinds of beautiful towns along the lake, which are, of course, best accessed by boat. So along Lake Como, I did mention it is unfortunately one of the most polluted lakes in Italy, but you can still do water recreation. You can do, speed boats and motor boats, and some people do fish in certain parts around Lake Como. And you can also do water skiing. This is actually my oldest daughter, Stella, when she was young, learning to water ski. And to do that, they have coaches and teachers and lessons you can take. You go to Pescallo, the place I was showing you before, to take the water skiing lessons on Lake Como. Another thing you can do is go to other little villages like Varena. This is me and my 3 daughters, and we went to Varena. We took the ferry across from Bellagio, just in front of the Swiss, and then we came over to Varena. So it's about maybe a 20-minute boat ride. You can see Isola Comacina there, and then you can see Varena. And this is actually coming back on the boat from Varena back to Bellagio. So it's really up to you if you want to do Bellagio as maybe 3-4 days tops, or you want to do just Bellagio as a day trip, or use Bellagio as a jumping off point and then do day trips to places like Villa Carlotta. And you can also rent a motorboat. The motorboat launch is not that far from the Hotel Swiss along the lake. And then I was mentioning before Isola Comacina, which you see in the middle ground there. Supposedly it was cursed by the people of Como in the Middle Ages, but it is a great place to go out and visit for the day. This is the Rockefeller Foundation, also known as the Villa Serbelloni, from which the hotel gets its name, and you can also get a guided tour up there. And then basically Bellagio is a lot of, steep steps and what they call, again, salitas going throughout the town. You have Lower Bellagio and Upper Bellagio, and there's a lot of wonderful shopping, mainly for things like silk. They're well known for silk, also beautiful hand-blown glass ornaments like Christmas ornaments, and a lot of silk ties, things like that, and a lot of jewelry that you find along the lake, more than you find in Upper Bellagio. Also some beautiful little gourmet food shops, alimentaris. This is in Upper Bellagio along Via Garibaldi. And one of my favorite shops to buy silk scarves and other items is a place called Saraceno, and there's an outlet, and there's also the Saraceno store that you find on one of the salitas. Anyway, Bellagio, this is above Bellagio. This is a town called Visnola, which is beautiful with great lake views. And if you go there, there's a wonderful pasticceria San Cassani, which is the same name as my oldest daughter's father. So that's a very old Bellagio name, San Cassani. And coming up here, you have, if you go just a little bit outside of Bellagio, in a town called Monza, which is in the area around the Brianza on the way to the Swiss border, you have a lot of hiking trails and waterfalls. Absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, my friends, there's just magic in the air around Lake Como, no matter how you look at it. And I'm definitely going to be doing a whole thing on Como, the city itself, as a jumping off point to the magic of Bellagio. Again, as a day trip, or just maybe 2 or 3 days in Bellagio, I think would be more than sufficient. Anyway, if you're enjoying my content and you're finding it useful, please like, follow, comment, share, subscribe. I'm on Laura in Italiano on both Instagram and also on YouTube. Thank you all, my friends. Amici miei, be well. And I hope that if you haven't had the opportunity yet to visit this magical part of Italy, Lake Como and Bellagio, make sure that you do, and soon. Andiamo. Grazie. Ciao, ciao.